In the not-too-distant future, the planet's resources have been depleted, the world has fallen into decay and social order has been shaken. Most of the population has fallen below the poverty line and is forced to abandon their homes and go to refugee camps, where there is at least a small hope of survival. One day, Chaplain Peter Lee comes to the hospital to visit his terminally ill wife. He confesses to the woman that he wants to leave with her, but she convinces him not to rush. God has told her that another very important and responsible path is in store for him because Peter has no idea what he is capable of. After his wife's death, USIS executive Vivian Hayes contacts him and shows him a video message from Tycoon and Peter's longtime adversary, David Morgan, founder of a colony on a newly discovered exoplanet that looks like a desert, but is nonetheless habitable for human life. Morgan literally begs Peter to come to the planet, without explaining why he would want to. This, despite the fact that the men were adversaries in the matter of creating a planet and shelter for the minimum number of people in need. At first, Morgan was opposed to establishing a religion there, but now believes that a colony without a god cannot exist. Peter agrees after learning that Morgan is offering a very impressive aid for the land, which will help a large number of people survive. Before departure, the chaplain undergoes a complete medical examination, because the price of sending to the Oasis colony will be 100 million. Everything turns out to be normal, despite some mental distress. The man gets acquainted with his traveling partners, among whom are people of various scientific specialties, and the team goes to the spaceport. Stewart helps travelers to properly position themselves in the chairs, because they are waiting for an artificial coma for the time of the jump. The takeoff begins, during which Peter remembers his wife until his consciousness leaves him, while thousands of people left on the ruined Earth watch the rocket, hoping for the salvation of humanity. The new planet greets the new arrivals with dust storms and strong winds. The humans are brought out of their comas and escorted to an underground bunker. Upon learning that Peter is a priest, the workers greet him with disapproval, as no one expected his arrival, and the colony has strong doubts about his usefulness. Meanwhile, Morgan's deputy and head of the colony's executive Vikram Dinesh holds a meeting as the workers demand to start drilling to finally get water. But Vikram reminds them that his friend and boss has given clear orders not to do anything until he returns. Colony security officer Sarah Keller reports to him about Peter's arrival, which no one was expecting. But if the chaplain was invited by Morgan himself, he must be welcomed and made well at the colony. But first, Vikram orders a background check on the man. At this time, Peter and his comrades are brought to the shower room, but the problem is that there is no water for a long time, and no one has made a new well, so for now people wash with special foam and wet wipes. Later, all arrivals receive special vaccinations to help their bodies get used to the oxygen mixture, and a mandatory bug to help track their place of stay. The doctor warns that headaches and visual hallucination are possible on the planet due to the pressure of the unfamiliar atmosphere on the ocular nerve. Time later, the man goes to lunch, during which Vikram welcomes the newcomers, who have become representatives and builders of the new world. A lot depends on them, because according to the plans, the Oasis will be able to accommodate about 50,000 families in its finished form. Now the drilling is stopped, but since the beginning of the project people have overcome many obstacles, and if they are united, they can solve all problems. Vikram welcomes Peter, which causes ridicule from those present. But Peter admits that he didn't always believe either, because life is too incomprehensible. But he sees the faces of brave people around him, who have sacrificed their families and for a new life of humanity, and he is ready to listen to everyone and help in any way he can. After lunch, Peter is escorted to his quarters. Each of them has a device to send letters home and receive all the news of the colony. The attendant activates an account for Peter and hands him a medication to help him sleep, because on Oasis you can't get too much sleep or it will be very bad. But he doesn't say exactly what it is. Sarah is in her quarters writing and sending a letter for her daughter, who is left on Earth. The woman misses her very much and hopes her father will let the girl reply sooner. Peter, researching a personal PC, receives a message with a quote from the book on it, and at night he hears his wife's voice reminding him of his difficult but important journey. In the morning, the missionary goes outside where the sunny weather is calm, and sets out to familiarize himself with the place where fate has thrown him. Soon he meets a girl named Alicia, who tells him that drones are following them everywhere, and there are no tickets to land yet, and there won't be any. But when asked about Morgan's whereabouts, for some reason, everyone is silent. Peter receives a call from Vikram, goes to the base, and upon entering, sees a woman dancing in front of a huge screen with water on it. Having admired this sight, He goes to the office of the chief and accidentally overhears the conversation of the workers about the strange events taking place here. Meanwhile, Sarah Keller is jogging through the desert. Vikram meets the chaplain warily and wonders how exactly Morgan invited him to the Oasis. The man recalls the tycoon's words about a man of God, at which point Vikram confesses that David Morgan hasn't returned from his last research trip to the desert. And in fact, the boss has been acting very strangely lately. First, he stopped drilling when there was a catastrophic water shortage, and then he called a priest from the ground instead of a planner, and disappeared into the desert without a trace. At this time in the desert, Sarah hears her daughter's voice and sees her among the Barchans. Following this vision, Sarah discovers the Mars rover on which David Morgan made his last trip half buried in the sand with its windshield broken and bloody. There is no man inside, but there is a bag with a box full of medication. Sarah immediately calls Vikram and informs him of the find. At this time, Peter goes to the restroom where he must wait for those who wish to talk to the priest. Meanwhile, Sai, a biologist who flew in with Peter, starts working on the greenhouse hydroponic plant. And it turns out that he is dyslexic and cannot read the instructions. Peter gets his first visitor. Back at the colony, Sarah Keller shows the boss a box of antibiotics and insists on setting up a search party to find Morgan. But Vikram refuses, as the boss has cut out his own tracker and therefore doesn't want to be found. He orders a team to be assembled and start drilling. The driller Paul Hallen tells Peter about his father, who took him to the racetrack as a child. So the boy loved horses very much, and when he grew up he bought himself a foal. Paul groomed it himself and remembers the horse's eyes well. When the horse started to participate in the jocks, Paul bribed a veterinarian and the veterinarian drugged the animal, which caused the horse to fall before the finish line and Paul had to shoot his horse. The man remembered it for the rest of his life as his worst act, but the strangest thing was that he saw his horse here on the Oasis. Here, everyone sees or hears something, and then fatal accidents happen. Despite the young age of the colony, they already have 3 gravestones in their graveyard. Then comes a message from Vikram about the start of drilling and Paul forgets his troubles. Peter goes to Sarah's office, where he finds Morgan's backpack which contains postcards with religious images. Sarah can't explain where their founder is and refuses to discuss accidents, but shows Peter's own personal file, which reflects the unpleasant deeds of his past. Peter explains that he met the girl who led him to God. The next morning, the greenhouse supervisor is amazed at the assembled equipment that Sai has made. It turns out the guy is a real genius at growing plants in difficult conditions. Meanwhile, drilling of a new well begins, which is led by Paul. But as soon as the drill touches the ground, the man sees his horse nearby and trying to reach it, goes straight to the drill and gets mortally wounded. The men manage to pull his wounded body out and carry it to the medical bay. The chaplain arrives as Paul says he saw his horse and dies. None of the workers can explain anything, and then the doctor leads the chaplain to a monitor because it turns out David sent her something before he left, asking her to show the chaplain if he would fly in and if she would trust him. The woman turns on a recording of a voice calling out to Jesus Christ. Later, Vikram announces that Paul has died in an accident. This angers the workers. They saw it all for themselves. It wasn't an accident. Paul walked up to the rig by himself and it's all happening because of the planet, because humans don't belong here. So the workers urge Vikram to find out the reasons for the deaths and take measures to protect them. Also, the doctor confesses that the pressure on the oculomotor nerve is nonsense, and she set it on Morgan's orders. People become agitated, which could lead to a riot. After a while, the doctor opens Morgan's room to Peter and he finds a secret message and some coordinates on the wall. He gets in a rover to get to the coordinates when he is stopped by Sarah. The woman confesses that she too has seen her daughter. And against orders, Vikram lets Peter go to find out what's going on here after all, and can find Morgan. At this time, Vikram declares a state of alert on the station, and since David Morgan is missing, takes control of the colony for safety and to prevent a riot. Meanwhile, Peter drives through the desert and finds a mountain range, climbing up which he finds himself in a cave where he discovers a lake and sees a woman who, upon pulling back her hood, turns out to be his late wife. Despite good reviews of the series, Amazon abruptly closed the project after the release of only the first episode. It is still unknown if the series will be released. Let me know what you think about it in the comments.